Hello, Peter Morgan here, today talking about how to determine when work is finished in an Agile development environment. This is aimed at those that have a working knowledge of Agile, those that have been or are involved in the Agile way of working. If this is not your experience, you'll get some benefit from the following, but it will be less rounded. It is possible that this talk will raise questions that relate to specific matters on your projects. Not all of these will be answered in a 10-minute talk. Here are 4 examples where the list is not meant to be exhaustive. Do you raise defects for items intended to be fixed in the current iteration or sprint? Is a periodic refactoring sprint necessary? What to do about very large requirements that cannot be completed during a single iteration? Should all testing be completed within the development environment? It is not my intention to give more than a fleeting definition of Agile. To do so would take up all the time available and plenty more besides. More eloquent people have supplied suitable words. The working definition I have is 2 sentences as follows. A way of collaboratively working to regularly deliver working, production quality software packages that meet business expectations in agreed time boxes. Each time box package could be promoted into the production environment. How does that sound for a description? The flavour of Agile I will be using is primarily Scrum, using the terms Scrum, Sprint and Backlog. At the end of each sprint there is something fulfilling business needs that could be delivered into production. Alternatively, it could be banked, put on the shelf as a known quantity to be promoted either in isolation or with other subsequent sprint outputs. It is not unusual for Agile development teams to make frequent deliveries, every 3rd or 4th of which is implemented into production as a cumulative release to tie in with business priorities. Definitions of done revolve around what it means to be finished, the exit criteria for a sprint. Strangely, I want to begin by talking about entry criteria. Contrary to popular belief, Agile working is not unstructured, or described as waterfall without documentation by Brett Gonzalez. No, it is the most structured way of working that I know. However, it cannot be employed without some ground rules, what I'm calling the preconditions for Agile development. Just because something is termed Agile does not mean that it works in that way. Some projects are more Agile by accident than others are by design, is a phrase I've used before. Here are some items to consider for your entry criteria to answer the question, are we ready to begin? How long is each sprint? The length of each should be the same, typically 2 to 4 weeks. Access to users, real users with decision-making power. Ideally, these should be full-time team members. Configuration management capability. A development environment which may incorporate continuous integration and overnight builds. A team with, where necessary, access to external experts, e.g. infrastructure. The team has 3 elements, developers, testers and users, and someone to hold it together, a Scrum Master. A definition, however initially vague, of what the software solution incorporates. What business problems are we trying to resolve? A means of tracking progress and possibly recording and tracking defects. An approach to regression testing. How will we as a project team check that we have not broken previously delivered functionality? Structure for each time box or sprint. Sprint planning, daily stand-ups, end of sprint review, which may include a demonstration to the user or user group. At the start of each fixed length sprint, items from the overall list of high-level tasks are considered for inclusion at the sprint planning meeting. These are part of the product backlog and, if included, broken down where necessary into smaller tasks, the list of which becomes the sprint backlog. Each included item will have some way or ways of determining when complete, often expressed as stories with a common format, as a "I need to" in order to be able to. Here's an example. As a system administrator, I need to create users in order to be able to allow appropriate system access. Stories incorporate a means of checking what has been done, both positive and negative. Can a system administrator create a user? Can only a system administrator create a user? So, what about done? Development has started. How do we know that we've finished? The easy answer is that the time has run out, but that is simplistic. What does done mean? As with everything else in Agile, it's a team decision, not on the say-so of any one individual. Although I must add, the users have the loudest voice. Any end of sprint user demonstration can be extremely useful. If this activity is part of the development cycle, important features will usually be demonstrated to not just the team, but to other key individuals as well. The project sponsor is someone who springs to mind. If issues are raised at these sessions, and this can and does happen, a decision is required as to what to do. It may not be necessary to stop the sprint and fix items immediately, but to fix forward. In my time working at EDF Energy, we had a threefold definition of done, and I want to propose this for you. The framework of doneness worked for us and could form a basis of working within your teams. We talked of done for a story, done for an iteration or sprint, and done for an installation. Each of these is worthy of further explanation. Done for a story. What does done for a story mean? Here we are concerned with the features being delivered, which could be described as functional or non-functional in traditional testing terms, depending on the story involved. Does the exhibited behaviour meet expectations as determined by the story? The story could be happy path testing, a thin slice through the more rounded functionality, demonstrating end-to-end activity. This is fine, as long as elsewhere there are scenarios that examine other system possibilities, sad path and bad path situations. To clarify, sad paths are error situations that could happen, perhaps because of user mistakes, an incorrect data file, or file format perhaps, whereas bad paths are where fundamental system problems exist, the database is offline, or the network unavailable. Done for a story is asking whether the software does what it says on the tin, and an answer of yes could still expose other stories that have not been considered to be part of this sprint, but should be. For example, missing sad path and bad path scenarios. Other factors that need to be considered in done for a story are unit tests written and all passed, self-documenting code, that is, with sufficient comments to enable any future maintenance to be undertaken, the code peer-reviewed and conforming to company and/or project standards, and there to be a high level of code coverage. These factors are very important, as the goal of each and every sprint or iteration is the delivery of production quality software. The exact level of code coverage can be determined on a project-by-project basis, but even 100% statement coverage can be difficult to achieve when looking at any significant amount of bad path testing. Unless you actually test the database being offline and network connection unavailability, there will not be 100% statement coverage. Lastly, A story cannot be considered done unless there's a way of testing it. The testability of each story should be assessed when the story is being written. It is the way of determining readiness. It is a badly written or unnecessary story if there's no way of checking that it has been completed. Done for an iteration or sprint. Each story is now complete, therefore the whole iteration is complete, right? No, that is wrong. Whilst done for a story can be likened to unit testing, done for an iteration has a parallel in system testing, although beware of taking the analogy too far. Testing involved in done for an iteration may be very different to that when checking the done for a story criterion. The emphasis here is, does the whole delivery work? Simply because each part works in isolation is not sufficient reason to throw the delivery over the fence. An aid to examining the done for an iteration rule can be a headline story for the whole sprint, although this is not always possible. In total, we are looking for no critical defects with the whole delivery working in the same way, for example, screen look and feel and error handling. Nothing that was delivered in a previous iteration is now broken unless previous stories have changed, deliberately changed, as a result of this iteration, in which case those stories need to be amended or removed in this delivery. The ideal is that testing is carried out in the same iteration as development occurred, as if there's an iteration lag, the development methodology can begin to reflect serial waterfall. So if there are time constraints, we need to ask about the testing effort involved. Who in the team is best placed to assist with the testing effort? A key at the end of this iteration is that there are no half-done stories. Configuration management is the vital ingredient. If something is half done, it is removed from the end of sprint demonstration and delivery. It is either 100% completed and included or not included at all. Time has run out at the end of an iteration, but testing has also run out, was planned to complete and has completed. Done for an installation. The early iterations may give work products that cannot be installed into production. Perhaps there's a proof of concept involved, or the output gives the user base a choice of which way to proceed, with options being demonstrable in the end of sprint review. There will come a time that the software could be implemented. This is when the third criterion of done is used, and here we are asking if the work products can or could be installed. Is everything ready from a software and process perspective? This aspect of done is not considering other items of any implementation. For example, is there a service level agreement in place? Are people available for production support, etc.? Rather, we are concerned with purely installation matters. Are release notes and/or installation instructions in place with, where necessary, backup plans? Can the installation be carried out by anyone, obviously suitably qualified, or are there assumptions in the documents? Is there any other documentation required? A user guide? If this is not the first installation, or it's a replacement application, are there database upgrade scripts? These are all the responsibility of the development team. Many Agile implementations can fall down because done for an installation has not been considered. The prime purpose of this talk is to get you thinking about what done means in an Agile development environment. It was never intended to answer all your questions, more to get you to ask the questions that you did not know you had, and together as an Agile team, define what done and doneness mean for you. Finally, I wholeheartedly acknowledge input of the whole Agile teams that I was part of at EDF Energy, Barnwood, during the period 2008 to 2011. The discussions above are a culmination of the debates we had in that period, and I am grateful to the input of all, especially Alistair Feeks, Chris Clark and Simon Flint.